Greetings, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and welcome back to another episode of the SavvyCat Podcast. I'm Savvy.
And I'm Cat.
And together we are SavvyCat because we're creative 12-year-olds who had to create a film company. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've been gone
Just
for a few weeks.
Just a smidge of time.
We're really sorry for not telling you we were leaving.
Yeah.
It was not a conscious decision initially.
Not really. We were going to take like a couple days and then it just kept going.
Yeah. Mental health, I know we say it every week, but mental health doesn't fix overnight.
No.
It's been a hard few weeks and things keep happening. And we have decided to prioritize our mental health above all else. And we know that you'll understand it. We're very sorry for not saying anything.
Yeah. Yeah. We have taken a bit of time for ourselves and we've kind of made a choice to take a look at how we've been approaching life and the decisions that we've been making and the things that we've been doing. And yeah, we've taken some time off of social media. We're taking a break.
Which is making us sleep.
Which is making us sleep, which is unfortunately making us a bit healthier, which is...
it's very weird.
It's very weird.
Basically, anxiety is high at the moment. There's
Yes.
things happening that are causing us anxiety, but we realize that we have to take care of ourselves and, like, do our jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the break was very good, and it made us realize quite a bit, but now it's time to get our heads out and start getting back
to normal.
Into a rhythm.
Yeah.
In saying that, please be aware.
Yeah, if we go missing, we're fine. It's just that we need
yeah.
time to process life.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, mental health is a big thing that we have always talked about on this channel. We've always been, saying advocates is such a weird word to me. It's a perfectly normal word, but yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today, kind of. Mental health, our approaches to it.
But in a slightly different way than we normally talk about it. A slightly different issue.
Slightly different issue. As we said, we've taken a break from social media.
Yes, which has been really good.
It has been very good. It has been...
I didn't know how much I used social media.
Oh, I know.
Until, like...
It's been 2 days.
It's been 2 days, and I'm still, like, sitting here, like, I go to open Twitter, and I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It is very... I find myself just pressing it without even...
Yeah. No, I do it constantly, and then I'm like, wait, fuck! And then I have to close it immediately.
Yeah. I never realized how much time and energy it takes from me until I can't use it anymore. Yeah. And it has been actually very helpful. Very beneficial.
Partially, it's weird because it gives me anxiety not using it, but it also, and I'm like, I have anxiety not knowing what's going on, but then I also know that if I was on it, it would be giving me worse anxiety. Yeah. Twitter was becoming very bad for our mental health.
Very bad. There were, like, I've always used Twitter as kind of like a news source. That's how I kept updated with things and kept updated with what people were saying about things. And it got to the point where there were some things that were brought up over and over again, and I was seeing so much negativity and things that were made to seem like a big deal but weren't actually that big of a deal, just in my face constantly. And when you're in such a negative, stressful space, you bring that into your own life when actually in reality, it doesn't have that much of an impact that you think it is. So I think it's important to recognize that if you just take yourself out of that situation and realize that if you don't constantly surround yourself on updated bad news, you realize that it's not all negative. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't keep updated.
No. There's a difference between being updated with news and being updated on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because on Twitter, it's not just news, it's seeing everyone talking about it.
Opinions on the
And then
news.
you see people who you disagree with, and, like, it's not even just disagreeing with, it's that people who are actively being harmful. And because, and even a lot of the time, like, we talk about this all the time, there's, like, a very loud minority on Twitter. It doesn't have to be, like, things trend, and it doesn't even have to be that many people talking about it for it to trend.
Yeah.
There just has to be more people talking about that than other things.
Yeah.
And so you see people... Do you want to shut up, helicopter? Yeah, so it's like you see a lot of people talking about shit, and it doesn't matter what the situation is, but there's always going to be people who have wrong opinions.
Yes.
So, like, despite what it is, like, there could be, you know, when stuff happens, like, fucking the Mr. Potato Head thing.
Yeah.
And then you see a bunch of, like, white Americans being like, we can't have any... And that's infuriating in itself because you're reminded that those people exist. And it's this thing because, like, that's my job, right? Is going through those people's posts. But I go to specific places where I know that's going to be.
Yeah.
But when it...
Is in your...
Twitter, when it's in my space where I'm trying to escape my work,
Yeah.
and that's there, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And, like, there's so many situations like that, where just things are so big when they don't have to be. And I forget that off of Twitter, it's not like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten into this kind of... With this whole... everything going on right now that has been... I feel like everything has been accumulating over this past year and a bit. Yeah. Where everybody's stresses and annoyances and everybody's collective just frustration at the entire situation in the world has been building and building, where it's getting to this point where every single thing is either the biggest thing in the world or not important to them, so they won't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to try and remind yourself that Twitter is not the real world.
Because that is all we have connection-wise to people at the moment. We don't have the real world. Yeah. We have social media. Yeah. And so it's become the whole world. Yeah. And I think people are, very much enwrapped in that. And that is why things become such a big deal, because people forget that there's more than just...
Yeah. We haven't socialized with real people in such a long time that we're forgetting that Twitter is, like, 120 characters of someone's life.
Yeah. So it's a big mess. And we're taking a break.
Yeah.
And because it's got way too much.
Yeah. And I do think that is good advice for you all, is that as important and as special as social media is, it is all right to step away from it.
Yeah.
And you yourself as a person and your health is more important than a screen.
Yeah. And, like, even, like, sometimes, you know, we talk about, like, having to speak up for things and fight for things, but you can't be helping other people if you aren't helping yourself.
Exactly.
If you are not in a position where you're able to help other people or keep up to date with news because it's damaging your mental health, that's okay, and you can take a break, because you can't be of assistance or helping anything or anyone if you aren't taking care of yourself first.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's an important thing to remember as well.
Yeah. It doesn't make you any less... It doesn't make you...
Any less.
Yeah.
End of.
You don't have to prove your worth.
No. Just because a lot of activism and stuff online is performative as well, which is like a whole other story.
Yeah.
But also, not going on social media, who knew, helps you sleep.
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently our parents were right this whole time.
Don't tell them that, please.
Do not tell our parents that they were right.
No. I've been a very...
Just because I've been I stopped using Twitter and now I can go to sleep. Not related?
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate that they were right.
I know.
That
Who
makes me
knew
so upset.
that, like, scientific evidence was like correct.
Disgusting. I'm upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's our position
On social media at the moment.
at the moment.
And our mental health. And how it has been very good for us. It's been 2 days, but it's been
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it has.
We're
been
trying
good.
to go the week.
The week.
And maybe we can extend that.
The week without Twitter.
It's like my sister. I don't know how she fucking does it. She's so strange. For a 17-year-old, like...
She's got it sorted.
She had a challenge with her friends where they used like old Nokia phones for a whole term, and then she just stuck with it.
Yeah. No,
She never uses social media, and like her goal is to one day move out of the city to like a farm with 2 cows, rescue cows, just to be her friends, a couple of cats, and she's like, and no Wi-Fi or cell service, so people can't bother me. Just DVDs. I don't want the internet. I don't want phone service. I don't want to talk to anyone. Just me, my cows, and my cats. That's it.
I highly respect that.
Yeah. That's been her goal forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how she, like, what career she has in this hypothetical world. I don't know how she's going to achieve. But that's what she wants.
Yeah, that's what she wants.
I think she wants to marry someone and then steal all their money. Yeah. Make them buy her house and then, like, not sign a prenup, so they get a divorce and then she gets half their money. I told her to marry an old person and wait for them to die, and she's like, no, old people are gross.
I respect that too.
Yeah, she's like, I don't want to marry an old person. No, it wasn't even the old people are gross. She's like, if an old person wants to marry me, they're a creep. I don't like them.
No, that's, yeah.
And also they're gross.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Yeah, I do respect
I think that if, an old person, I respect it.
Yeah, I respect that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's, it's interesting, like, once, about, like, 4 or 5 months into quarantine, everybody was like, I am moving in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And not speaking to anyone. I'm getting a cottage.
Cottagecore was huge.
As it should be.
Yeah.
That's been my...
And, like, living in vans and
shit?
shit?
Yeah, no, everybody was just like, I am on my own now.
Yeah.
Which is respectable.
If I have to be isolated, I'm going to be isolated in the woods.
Yeah, I'm going to be isolated by my own volition, not anybody else's.
I have people say, like, I was talking about the trees and your tree catches the curse.
Yeah.
Like, that's why witches live in forests. They have so many trees to catch all the curses.
I am so sorry, Bruce.
Bruce, we better not kill, Miro.
Yeah, Miro, we got a new plant.
My mom sent us a plant.
Her name is Miro. Bruce, our Christmas tree, suffered an unfortunate fate.
Yeah.
Of being cursed.
No, I was cursed.
You were cursed.
Bruce caught the curse.
Bruce caught the curse.
Yes.
Miro better do well.
Yeah, she's only a few days old.
Yeah.
Some of her leaves are bent, and I don't know how that happened.
It was packaged badly.
Okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't us.
No, it wasn't us.
Miro is a dragon plant.
She's also named after a Stray Kids song. So.
Of course she is.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
It's a very good song.
Da 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 da.
Stray Kids, woo!
Miro's a cute name.
It's a very cute name.
It means maze. Which is cute. Fits.
Yeah.
I think it suits her. Anyway,
that was a very side topic.
that was a very good side tangent there.
Yes.
We haven't even talked about what the main
Oh yeah.
topic of the video was going to be yet.
It is mental health.
It is mental health related.
And
also Twitter related.
Yeah,
So
and
we kind of have.
we were on the right track there.
Yeah,
we
we
just
were.
didn't find a good segue into it.
On track. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Watch me get a copyright notice because of that one. Today's topic is something that
we talk about a lot.
we talk about a lot. And it's one of those things where I don't know if where other people stand.
I don't know where other people stand. I think it's a very mixed bag.
Yeah, it's a very mixed conversation.
Yeah.
But
I feel like we being through what we've been through and who we are and where we're at, I think we have
a
very good position to be able to speak on this.
Yeah, I think we put our opinions down too much, because I've always been the type of person of like, I don't want to speak over people, but this is something that directly affects me.
It's like I do that a lot with like homophobia and stuff. I'm like, I don't want to speak over people about homophobia. I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. Because I am a person who it is directed towards.
Yeah, exactly.
And like people always ask me to speak about my experience with like depression and anxiety. I'm like, I can't speak about that. I don't know enough about... Hello?
Yeah.
What do you mean, Savannah?
Yeah. No, it is that thing of like, I don't want to step or invalidate anybody.
But in the process, we're being invalidated.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
This audio is fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
We would like to talk about trigger warnings.
Yeah.
We did speak a little bit about it.
In the past.
Yeah. But some certain situations and some certain comments have really brought this into the forefront of our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I'm not gonna lie, it is affecting my mental health. And I don't want it to continue to the point where the way people are starting to approach trigger warnings and deal with them and talk about them is very contrary to the point of why we started using trigger warnings.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to get to a point where it becomes so toxic and misused where it becomes nullified, which I see it getting to that point, and that worries me as a person who needs trigger warnings. To see them being misused is getting to a point of dangerous territory, and I just want to clear my thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where should we start with this?
I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Why don't we explain the origin of the trigger warning? You can go for that.
Trigger warnings, from my understanding, it was back in Tumblr. Tumblr and like very early Twitter. It was basically, Tumblr had a setting where you could mute certain words.
Twitter also has
Twitter also has this a setting where you can mute certain words so they don't appear on your timeline, or on Tumblr there's a little notice that has this post contains blank, and then you can view post or just leave it. Mm-hmm. And that's where trigger warnings came in, because it was like trigger warning self-harm. If you didn't want to see anything about self-harm, if it included the word self-harm, it would be blocked off that was what trigger warnings were for. Or if it was the first thing you saw, you could scroll past very quickly. People have been I don't think people understand that that's why they're formatted like that, because people will censor the words or they'll like mistype them. That's not why we put the word there. Like, if you do trigger warning self-harm and then you like star out the E, that means it will appear
on people's timelines who've blocked the word self-harm.
Yeah. And that's dangerous because they've purposely avoided using that kind of thing. And there is a big difference between triggering content and educational content and awareness content. I think people are getting very mixed lines between them and are using trigger warnings for things that aren't triggering or are
forcing you to... There's a difference between being triggered in a harmful way and forcing you to confront your issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's kind of like that thing of like with trauma and like exposure tasks and things like that. If you were at a point where someone just like saying, hey, I think you need help, and you're like, that triggered me, That's you avoiding talking about it and getting help.
Yes, exactly.
So, like, if I were to post something about, like, these are the signs of an eating disorder, and someone's like, hey, that's triggering. I'm like, if that's triggering for you, it means you probably have an eating disorder and you need help.
Yes.
And if you've been diagnosed with an eating disorder and that triggers you, you clearly aren't receiving the help that you need.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Because that's not meant to be triggering. That is important content. And I think people with eating disorders still need to see that.
Yes, I think so
And
too.
there's a difference between something being hard to see and hard to talk about and being
Triggered.
triggering.
Yeah.
And it comes to that point, like you say, of being nullified, of like, if you're overusing trigger warnings on things that are like very, very, just like mild.
Well, you see things like trigger warning food. That is extremely dangerous because subconsciously you're telling people you should be triggered by food. This is a triggering thing. You can do content warning or, no, even then.
Yeah, it's food.
If
it's like meat, yes, please put a content warning. I do not want to see meat
valid
on your feed. I don't want to see it.
But if it's like, some people post like their like dinners or their cereal or something like that, and they'll put like content warning food. And the warning there tells you that this is something that you need to be warned against. And that is dangerous because it enables...
It's saying food is bad.
Yeah, it's validating the feelings that people...
Yeah.
Who... Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's dangerous because that will continue to keep enabling the behavior of this is a bad thing that I need to avoid when it's food. It should be encouraged. It should be...
And it's...
Dieting, very different. Dieting, I think, needs a trigger warning.
Yeah.
Specifically dieting as in techniques people use for dieting pills,
I just
weight
think
loss.
that shouldn't be talked about.
They shouldn't be talked about at all.
But if they're there, I think they do need trigger warnings.
Because that is actively encouraging and saying that this is...
Yeah.
Whereas food, it's just food.
Yeah. Saying, like, bringing awareness to things is very different to sharing your experience with things also.
Yes.
So, like, in terms of saying, the other thing I see is people putting, like, I see tattoo accounts and things putting trigger warnings before they show, like, a scar cover-up for self-harm scars. And they're like, trigger warning, self-harm scars. And I understand why they would do that. But at the same time, I think that we shouldn't be triggering people's bodies.
No.
Because by saying trigger warning, like, you're implying that someone's body is triggering and that means they should be hiding it. And I think, you know, it's... I understand how self-harm scars can be triggering. I do. I can get triggered by self-harm scars myself. It is difficult. But also I know that that's on me and not on them. And that's something that I have to work with and I have to deal with. And like I say, exposure tasks are very important. That's one of the first things you learn in therapy is being able to handle your triggers in real world situations. In eating disorder therapy, I had to learn that in life, you're going to come across people who talk about weight loss. You're going to come across people who talk about dieting. That is the culture we live in. That's the society we live in. You have to figure out how you are going to handle that because other people are not in control of your triggers. You can't do anything to stop them from doing that. It's going to happen. What are you going to do about it? That's how triggers are meant to be managed. And I am very aware that things like self-harm scars can be triggering, but that's their body. I can't do shit about that. And I think that people shouldn't feel the need to cover their bodies to help other people who just don't know how to handle their own triggers.
I think there's a difference between, you know, actively talking about your experiences with self-harm versus just existing in the body that you have. I think it can be more triggering to tell someone to label their body as a warning.
No, it is, for sure.
And you saw that a lot on TikTok. TikTok is reminding me a lot of 2014 Tumblr, and that is very concerning because it's not healthy.
Yeah.
People would go onto TikToks where, you know, people with just bodies would be dancing and they'd be like, can you trigger this? Do not say that to people. People's existences, people's bodies, them existing as who they are, it's not wrong.
Context is important,
Very.
right? It's like that thing of like, there's a difference between someone existing in their body and like posting on Instagram and things, which I understand. If certain body types are triggering for you, unfollow them on Instagram. That's all I could say. Just unfollow them. But that's not their fault. But there's a difference between people existing and then like thinspo accounts.
Yes.
They could be the same body, but the context is what matters.
Yeah. If it's the context of you should look like me,
that's triggering.
That's triggering.
If it's just someone like, hey, I exist, that it's not a trigger. It can be a trigger, but it's not their responsibility.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
there's a difference between something that you have to manage and something that people are doing that's actively triggering.
Yes, exactly. It is that kind of contextual thing of not everything is in black and white.
Yeah.
And you have to realize in the long run what is more beneficial for your mental health and the mental health of other people. And this is really hard to admit to yourself, but sometimes hearing difficult things like this is what an eating disorder, these are signs of eating disorders, not this is what I did when I had an eating disorder, but these are signs of depression. Sometimes you need to be exposed to that.
Yeah.
And to continuously market it as something wrong, something that you can just scroll past, something that you can ignore, that I think is dangerous in the long run because it stigmatizes it.
And the whole point is that we're trying to destigmatize mental health.
Exactly.
And now every time we talk about mental health, we're told that we're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's upsetting. Of course it's upsetting.
Yeah, it is upsetting.
It is upsetting. And sometimes you need to hear upsetting things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, everything is triggering to someone. I always like to say, and we've talked about this before. And it is this really difficult thing as well of like the severity of things, right? Like it's a running joke in our generation to be like, ha, gonna jump.
Yeah.
That sort of shit, right? And you see it all over TikTok, you see it all over Twitter, it's everywhere. And it's a relatable thing that everyone says.
Yeah.
Because it's like a coping mechanism thing, right?
Yeah,
and everyone knows that it's a joke.
Yeah.
And putting a trigger warning on that adds the implication that it's not a joke.
Yeah.
And then therefore makes it triggering.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a difference between once you add the trigger warning, you make it something capable of...
It's sort of implying that it's meant to be triggering.
It's giving the context of triggering things. It's something that your brain goes, oh, this might be triggering to me. Oh, this might be triggering to someone.
Yeah.
When it could be just something.
I remember, like, I'd see things. I don't do this so much anymore. But, like, because of what I hear other people say, I would see things that I'm like, oh, that could be triggering for someone. And I realized that, like, I'm a person who would be triggered by it if it was going to be triggering. And I think a lot of people don't actually find things triggering, but rather think that it could be triggering for someone. And by implying over and over that this is a triggering thing, people start to believe that it is triggering without it actually being triggering.
Yeah.
I think a lot of triggers are actually learnt at this point.
Yeah,
which I think is interesting because, like, I used to say, you know, like, suicide jokes and shit weren't funny because it's triggering. But then I realized that I've never actually been triggered by that before. I was just told that I should be. Despite being, like, heavily suicidal. Someone being like, heck, I'm gonna jump was never triggering.
Yeah.
But I was told that it should be. Yeah. And therefore, I made it into a bigger deal than it was, if that makes sense.
It does make
sense. But, like, now, I still struggle with depression and, like, that sort of shit, right? But I find relatability, and I think it's funny. I find
it very comforting.
I find it comforting as well, that other people sort of, we all manage our stresses similarly.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between, like, making fun of it.
Yes.
And joking about it.
Yeah. There's a difference between, I'm gonna jump, or, are you gonna jump?
Yeah. There's a difference.
There's a very big difference.
I think it's different making fun of it for yourself and telling other people.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know. I always find it a bit kind of, this is just more personal, and I've spoken about this before, but I always find it a bit insulting when people trigger daily things, like normal, like food and parents and periods and things like that. And then I have very big triggers that are all over the internet that people don't even stop to consider that it'd be harmful for people to see. And I always find it insulting when I'm told to censor myself constantly, and then I go online and
see those same people
doing something that is actively very harmful. And it's a bit, I don't know. That's just personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I find it frustrating because I know that as well, everyone has different triggers, obviously.
Yeah.
But particularly, I guess, for us coming from places where we've struggled with this stuff for such a long time. And, like, I get frustrated sometimes because eating disorders are a big one.
Mm-hmm. Very
right?
big one.
I try to talk about eating disorders, and I have been in eating disorder communities.
Yeah.
For a very long time. I was in an eating disorder therapy group. I had, like, a recovery Instagram account where it's, like, hundreds of people all recovering together. And there's, like, whole communities and shit. People, like, join up and get food and stuff together and try to get through it together. It's a very, very supportive community that I was a part of for a very, very long time. And so we still follow each other on Instagram. We still see all the same shit. And I trust that this group of, like, so many people who are not, who are all my age, sometimes a bit older, who went through the 2014 sort of Tumblr period. We've all moved past this, like, thing. And none of the stuff that we're talking about being triggering has ever triggered any of us. And I think that sort of shows that, you know, all the people saying that this shit is triggering are younger and newer to not knowing what trigger warnings come from.
Yeah.
And, like, haven't been through this whole thing already before.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's difficult is that, like, we've been in that position. Like, I've been there. It's just gotten worse to the point where it's like the internet is even bigger now.
Yeah.
And, like,
it's this kind of thing of, like, I've already had this conversation.
Yeah.
I've already had to go through setting the lines and drawing the lines.
Yeah.
And because there is a new communities like TikTok and Twitter and everything like that, because it's resurfacing again, it's hard to watch people redo the same harmful things that I already thought that we had established.
Yeah.
And I understand that's how communities work, and I understand that's how generations work.
But it's infuriating.
And it's also very frustrating when older people try and tell you, I fully relate to and understand being young and being told that things are harmful and you being like, no, I know what I'm doing. Just sometimes conversations are good.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, I think that people don't even realize that it is this thing of, like, you see people saying to trigger warn stuff and they're like, trigger warning, suicide. And I'm like, that is making light of it.
Oh, yeah.
Suicide? That makes me so upset.
Yeah.
Because you're getting mad at people for joking about it and turning it into something that's, like, light, and it's a really intense and difficult subject, and we shouldn't talk about it because it's, like, big and scary and could hurt people, but you literally are turning it into a joke by saying suicide.
Yeah.
That is so disrespectful.
Yeah. There is, that I find 1,000 times more triggering and disrespectful than using humor to cope.
Yeah, turning words like that into, like, a joke to be like, we can't talk about it, that is disrespectful. And I do think that's triggering. That's making light of the situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone opening up and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, although that is triggering, I do admit, is like not turning it into a joke.
Yeah.
And I think people joking about suicide as a coping mechanism is, again, less offensive, less disrespectful, and less of a joke than calling it suicide.
Yeah, you see it all the time, like suicide, or like people turn that word into 1,000 different, and I always find that so insulting.
It's so insulting.
It makes it seem like
it is a joke.
It's a joke, and it's a bad word to say. Like,
It makes it seem like it is a dirty word, and it's not. It's an awful word.
Yeah.
It's very sad, but it's a serious word.
Yeah, the word is very, very important.
That's why you'll notice when people talk about, like, suicide jokes, you never use the word suicide in those jokes.
No.
As soon as you do, I feel like that makes it heavy, and that makes it triggering.
Yes.
Because, like, it's like an unspoken thing. Like, people say, gonna commit not alive, gonna commit unalive, because you know that that's a joke.
Yeah.
But as soon as you put suicide is a very serious and heavy word. As soon as that is put into there, instantly I will take it seriously.
Yes.
And I think that is an unspoken rule.
Yeah. And to make fun of that word in particular is very disrespectful.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of lines, and I think that it is very easy to get them blurred and muddled. But I think awareness is important, and we're to the point where we're censoring awareness, and I think that that's dangerous.
Yes.
And I think we've talked about this before as well, is if you start censoring, like, minor little things, like if someone's trying to raise awareness and just mention a word that makes you slightly uncomfortable, like someone said purge. They're like, you mentioned that word, so that's triggering, therefore you have to give a trigger warning, even though this is raising awareness and is important. It's like, then what happens if someone is... So if I put trigger warning eating disorder on that, even though that's an important awareness thing, when someone actually says something very triggering about an eating disorder and they put the trigger warning, I don't know what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume it's going to be this lighter thing because I want to know this stuff, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read that, and I'm going to be like, oh my god, that was very triggering.
Yeah. And I think, going back to the suicide thing, it's like there's a difference between, like we said, those words carry weight. So if you're making an educational post about suicide, it is a bit triggering, but it's important to read. It's important to share. It's important to raise awareness. However, if you use suicide in a joke, in like, how I'm going to suicide, then I feel, A, you're making fun of it. Or if it's, you know, this is something very detailed about suicide, then to put them all in the same category is very dangerous, because I don't know what I'm going to get anymore when I see trigger warning suicide. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to get, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah. I also think one that I just think is weird and annoying is, like, if you just say the word, people are, like, I started off and, like, in the first 3 words of a sentence, I'm like, what a dangerous thing about eating disorders, and then someone will comment being like, trigger warning eating disorder. I'm like, obviously, I literally in the first 3 words said eating disorder. You know,
it's the exact same thing, and using that word, that is why we started using, because
it's in the first sentence. If you read the word eating disorder and you don't want to read about eating disorders, then scroll on. I don't need to add an extra trigger warning.
It is. If you have that word muted already, it wouldn't have shown up on your timeline, or you would have scrolled. Like, just having eating, it is that thing.
It's like, as well, with things like sexual harassment and sexual assault and stuff, that's a very, very triggering thing, and I think that whenever people share stories about their experiences with that, there should be a trigger warning.
I agree.
But I think in terms of talking about how it's a problem and, like, say we need to educate people, I don't think that requires a trigger warning, and the fact that we're told that it should can actually again be very dangerous.
Because it makes it seem like something we
awareness is bad
and something we can ignore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that educational awareness content is very, very different to actually...
And I don't disagree that it can be triggering.
No.
It can be triggering.
It can be triggering.
But sometimes that type of triggering is important.
Yeah.
And it's shit. It's awful.
It is awful and shit, and it does hurt, and I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's triggers. It's just, I think that raising awareness and getting help is more important in some situations.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I hope that made sense, and that we didn't invalidate anybody, and that I just really hope that what we're trying to say and the message that we're trying to put forward came across clearly.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to blame anybody or accuse people of doing things wrong. I'm just trying to start this conversation again and try and tell you that sometimes we need to discuss things before we start all doing it. And we need to work out the origins and the reason why we're doing something in the first place.
Yeah.
That is all we're trying to say, and I hope it made sense.
Yes.
Yeah, we might leave it there.
I think so.
This was a lot heavier than usual, but then again, not really. We usually talk about
we're
heavy
usually
shit.
quite heavy stuff in this podcast. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming along.
Yes.
And we love you.
We love you.
And we will see you next week.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Sometime. We will see you.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep things to our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will see you.
Yes.
Eat food, drink water.
Yes.
Stay safe. In the description, there is a bunch of links to petitions, donations, emails, etc., etc. That is a bunch of important things happening in the world. So if you could check that out, that'd be really appreciated.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We love
Bye.
you. Bye. A massive, massive thank you to our wonderful, wonderful patrons.
Is Theo, Valerie, Artemis, Abby, Gio, Isa, Antonia, Trina, Jeff, Neil, Wolf, Peter, Jordan, Mo, Lollipop, Rahel, Alice, Thomas, Courtney, Elizabeth, Lilith, Chantel, Kat, Fern, Cody, Andrea, Camilla, Steve, Sarah, Binks, Kari, Isling, Juniper, Mia, Brando, Philippe, Quigley, Nathaniel, Rosa, Sid, Jonathan, Grace, and David.
We love you so, so much. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
We love you. Mwah!